The next 48 hours are not going to be easy for the Saints. Cutdown day is Tuesday, but this being a tough decision for the Saints is a good problem to have because they have a lot of talent on this year's roster. We're going to be breaking it all down, joined now by Nick Underhill, Mike Triplett, and myself, Brooke Kirchhofer. We have a loaded show. We're going a little bit longer on this one because there's a lot to get to.
Yeah, there's a lot. Preseason's over. Big time of the year. Roster's about to be set. We're about to know who the Saints actually are. So that's going to be a something to keep an eye out over the next 24, 36 hours, whatever it is. The first roster should be set by 3 o'clock tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that. We'll have all your analysis on it. And if you're not signed up for our site yet, use the code 2023 kickoff, 20% off your first payment at NewOrleans.Football. We are coming to you from the Toro Hospital studio. Any of your medical needs, check out the LCMC network. And we're presented by PJ's Coffee. They have locations all over the city, so make sure you go there and check them out. And last but not least, if you are in the market for a new car, if you just want to treat yourself to something better than what you got, go check out my guy, Matt Bowers. They have dealerships all over the Gulf Coast. Best car dealer you can find. His crew and team is as good as they get. They'll take care of you, get you in, get you out as painless and as cheaply as possible. So make sure you go check them out. The NewOrleans.Football show is proudly presented by PJ's Coffee. PJ's Coffee has some of the best drinks that you can find. They have locations all over the city. They have pastries and everything else you need to get your day started. So go check them out.
For fast relief coffee.
Mike Hoss here. When the AC goes out and it's hot outside, every second counts. For over 40 years, Keefe's AC Heating and Electrical has helped thousands of families stay cool in the sizzling hot months. Keefe's Get You Cool in 3 hours or less guarantee is what our customers love the most on the North or South Shore. Call Keefe's. We'll get you cool in 3 hours or less guaranteed.
Keefe's Air Conditioning and Heating.
And now electrical.
For fast relief, call Keefe.
Moe's Barbecue is located in Metairie. They have your game day needs taken care of. Whether you're tailgating or watching the Black and Gold or LSU at home with friends, Moe's has you covered. Order pulled pork, wings, ribs, sides, and more. Come in with the family for lunch and dinner as our kids' meals will please even the pickiest of eaters. Tailgating, parties at home, lunch and dinner, Moe's Barbecue will handle it all. Moe's Original Barbecue, 1101 North Causeway Boulevard between 48th and 49th Street in Metairie. Call 504-407-5333 for your catering order today. 504-407-5333. Moe's Original Barbecue in Metairie. Hard Hide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey is an 86 proof blend of aged wheat bourbon, American light whiskey, and fresh Ponchatoula strawberries. Blended in New Orleans, it is not for the thin-skinned. Look for it in your favorite stores, bars, and restaurants. NewOrleans.Football is proud to be sponsored by Firehouse Subs. Make sure you check out their location on Veterans Boulevard. All right, let's get into the show.
Let's get into our lead topic presented by Friend and Company Fine Jewelers. Go check out their engagement salon. And while you're there, ask them about their fleur-de-lis earrings and necklace that you see I have on now. They're especially priced for our NOF audience. All right. Cutdown day is Tuesday. The preseason is officially over. There is still one more training camp practice. Then we'll get a little bit of a break before the very first game. Titans at Saints in the Superdome, which is crazy to believe we finally made it here. But let's dive into this last preseason game. Who left a mark against the Texans in that third preseason game?
Nobody that I really had on the bubble. I mean, honestly, Jimmy Graham left the biggest mark for me. The fact that he was playing in the game, was just a reminder that he still had just a little bit more seasoning he needed from the time he missed. And it was like, okay, he didn't belong on the field. He was running rampant over everyone else. But I'm sure we're going to talk about all the people that are like on our bubble that maybe could have won it or lost it. I don't think anyone won or lost a job in that game.
For me, it was Brian Brzee. Like, that was the best I think we've seen him play. And it was just kind of like, wow, they might have really got a player here. Granted, going against backups and everything, but he got a little bit more room to cook and just it was kind of featured him a little bit. And I really like the stuff we saw from him. And then the other guy too, and it's someone that's going to play. It's not going too far down the depth chart, but I thought Alontae Taylor did well on the outside. On the inside, you see him in the slot. He's getting beat a little bit. I think you have to separate the two roles, but the play on the outside to start the game, that punch away, highly confident play, just in the right position. He's out there. They're making a statement to him. He made a statement back, which is what he needed to do. And I really like that moment.
To that point, Malcolm Roach and Jalen Smith too, guys who were going to play for this team looked like the best players on the field in a third preseason game, which was key.
Yeah, I think for this last preseason game, it's one of those where you expect to see somebody pop, somebody shine. We saw good things from players that have done good things all of training camp and all of the preseason games. We have seen them, which is kind of like lackluster. We want to see somebody new. I was hoping to see Shaq Davis make that final push. Credit to John Trey Kirkland. He took advantage of the opportunity and reps that he got. Maybe he lands. I don't know if he makes this 53-man roster, but maybe he lands with somebody else on special teams or somebody that maybe needs depth at wide receiver. He put it out on display. Let's go to the flip side of things, though. Who did we need to see leave their mark and they just didn't?
Well, I mean, I think there's a few guys, top of the list. The kickers was the big battle. And Groupie, it's weird because he might have left his mark. Like, he made 2 kicks, one from 50. After the 50-yarder, you're kind of looking at it and you're like, oh, like this might actually be like a real thing. Comes out from 60, has the chance, doesn't hit it. So we'll get into that more later. But I thought that was one. I thought Lucas Kroll, and I know people like were so hyped about him last night. He had 7 catches, 100 yards. But he had so many targets, and there's just the plays that he didn't make are the ones that stand out to me, and the plays that he didn't make are the ones that get him on the team. So that was a little bit, disappointing because I thought he had a chance to do it. And we want a reason to say, like, don't keep a fullback, keep an extra tight end. Lucas Kroll has so much upside. 2 camps in a row, like it's felt like he's been like right on that cusp, and just like that little thing to get him over hasn't hit yet. So yeah, I mean, I think those are the 2 guys for me. And to your point on John Trey, like I think practice squad's a real possibility for him too. Like he's popped a little bit since he got here. I like how he moves when he has the ball in his hands. If you have like injuries, he might be somebody that's good to have around to, break the glass on, even just to keep developing to see where he goes, because they're playing him more offense than defense now, and I think he's looked good.
On that point to John Trey Kirkland, I actually heard some things throughout the game that maybe the Texans might actually pick him up. Obviously, playing the Texans, they pretty much got their highlight reel right on display during that game, but this is what these opportunities are for, and maybe John Trey made that case.
Yeah, who didn't leave their mark? I'm just going to say every undrafted rookie. We all put out our 53-man projected rosters right after the game, and I was the only one in this room who had none of the undrafted rookies on there. I think they're all close. It's kind of like they're all like Blake Grupe. Like they all needed a 60-yard field goal to turn the tide. Like if Blake Grupe had hit that 60-yard field goal, but it would have been undeniable. If Shaq Davis or Ellis Merriweather or Anthony Johnson or Anthony Orji had done something undeniable, then I would have rewritten my 53-man projection. But I went into that game with them all just missing, and nobody. I didn't add anyone to my 53-man roster last night that I didn't have before the game. And I think Shaq Davis in particular is a guy who maybe had the chance to do it. Like, if Shaq Davis made those, I said this to you guys in the first quarter. If Shaq Davis made those 2 Jimmy Graham plays, if he had made a one-handed catch and then a touchdown, would we have been like, I mean, they can't deny it. It's the same thing as if Blake Grupe had made a 6-yard field goal. Doesn't mean any of them played themselves off the roster if the Saints already had them on there. I just didn't see anybody who forced me to change my mind.
Yeah, I would agree on those fronts, the Shaq Davis, the Ellis Merriweather, and guys like that. For me, I felt like Andres Pete didn't have a very good game, and this is a guy who has been the starting guard for a number of years with the New Orleans Saints. He unfortunately has been bitten by the injury bug. I feel like as of late, the last few years, got injured in a bad time this training camp, and James Hurst was readily available and proved that he deserves that starting guard position. And so I was more or less looking for Andres Pete to maybe solidify I either need to have that role back or I'm deserving of the backup role, which to me is just as important as the starters for this Saints offensive line, given the injuries. Like their backups better be as good as they better be able to like punch right in, move right in anytime any of these starters go out. And I just unfortunately didn't see it from Andres Pete. And I know the guy gets a lot of slack, especially from the fan base, but I would have liked to seen him take that step.
Yeah, I mean, we both left him off our 53-man roster projection, and I expect to be wrong on that. Like, I expect they probably keep him because you lose a lot of monetary value by cutting him. But I just didn't see it throughout camp. He hasn't looked good in these games. He got replaced as the starter. He got his contract redone this offseason. He's on a 1-year deal. So if you're keeping him, you're just saying, okay, we don't want to develop these other people that we have here. So I just kind of looked at it like, all right, just go with the younger people, get better for the future, and move that way if he's not part of your long-term plans. He's like not in shape. Like it just doesn't look good right now, and it's just hard to keep him. And I don't know, like it's in my head. I'm out there looking at it thinking like maybe this can happen. Everybody always wants a surprise cut. I don't know, just put it down and stand on something and be wrong. Like, I don't care. But like, I personally, if I was cutting down this team, I wouldn't keep him. I'd let him go. I'd move forward with Nick Saldivari and some of these other young people and go ahead with it that way.
Yeah, young and healthier too is something that.
Well, you
we
made that
added,
really
right.
good point, which is nothing is more important than reliable, available, healthy backups, and that's the biggest knock on Andrus Peat is health, and it's been the downfall of the offensive line. I mean, I kept him. I don't think it's too controversial, and I was going to keep him regardless, but also like remembering that his salary is already guaranteed for this year, $1.5 million. They already gave him a $4 million signing bonus, so they're paying him $5.5 million this year, no matter what. It'll actually cost them more to cut him, because then you have to pay yet another player, even if it's a minimum salary player. And plus, you could put him in a game at left guard, you could put him in a game at left tackle, and feel pretty good about it with the experience he's had, But you're absolutely right with what we've seen with our eyes. If he didn't have a salary and a history attached to him, it's been a really rough summer for him.
You say feel pretty good with him at left tackle or left guard. I don't know if I'm able to say that after this training camp, and that's only based on what I've seen this year.
Well, here's the problem. Look who was playing left tackle last night. It was Lewis Kidd. They don't. I mean, here's what would happen. James Hurst would slide over to left tackle if they needed another left tackle, and so it would be someone at guard. And so maybe that is a Nick Saldivari has. They'd be like. I mean, it'd be Calvin Throckmorton, Landon Young if he gets healthy. So you're right. Like, if you're just talking about guard depth, they do have some now.
Yeah, we'll see what happens Tuesday, right around the corner. It's crazy that a lot of these decisions are being made probably as we speak, later into the night, early in the morning. As Nick mentioned, the 60-yard field goal miss. That is our moment of the game presented by New Orleans Hamburger and Seafood Company. The reason why it's our moment of the game, because Blake Grupe had an opportunity to tilt that kicker battle that has been burning hot this entire training camp, to tilt that in his favor. I'm not saying that because he doesn't make that, he's not a starting NFL kicker somewhere. But if he did make that, and as we've seen, he's made them in practice, if he makes that in that game, I would be concerned if I'm Will Lutz, just because at this point, like, what has Blake Grupe shown to make you believe that he doesn't earn that starting role if he makes it?
If he makes that kick, I think I don't know how you go any other direction. That's like just totally like nails. Like, it would have been crazy if he hit it. He hit from 50, you hit from 60. Like, the fan base would have rioted if they didn't keep Grupe after that. And some of them already are. Like, he's a good kicker. He's going to start for a team. I don't think there's any question about that. He's one of the best 32 kickers walking the earth right now, coming out of this training camp. If you have a kicker, you're looking at Blake Grupe right now in seeing what they do. I'm sure a ton of teams have him circled. But if he makes that kick, and look, that's like almost like movie scripted for, like, the undersized guy. Like, it's a hero moment, like right there. Like, you got the music playing, you got the workout montage, like in the movie as he's walking up to it. He goes out there, he gets his chance, and he's wide right. So he missed that moment, but he might have capitalized. Like, I still think they could keep him. I still think there's a very real chance of that. I think it's a very hard decision. I bet there's Darren Rizzi's probably like wrestling with this, like, back and forth, like the guy versus the guy that you might want to know for the next 10 years as your kicker. Right. I think Blake's like kind of one of those guys, which is why I think it's a hard decision to make. He's done everything right this preseason. Missing from 60 shouldn't disqualify you, but I think it absolutely qualifies you if you hit that kick.
Well, and the kick itself wasn't even a knock. I mean, he showed he had the leg.
Yeah.
He didn't mishit it. It's just a really tough. And Dennis Allen's comments where it had plenty of distance, he was defending it, saying 60%, 60-yard kicks are a low percentage in this league. So I almost think that I don't want to say helped his case, but certainly didn't hurt his case that he showed it was a pretty good kick, and he shows he has that leg. But it was really interesting because we had this conversation in the press box. We were talking about it, and I said, to me, this has been a Will Lutz decision, not a Blake Grupe decision. It's been if you see that Will Lutz is back to being Will Lutz, and you have confidence in him, and you think he's over his health problems, he's over the inconsistency he showed last year, then that makes the decision for me. But as Nick said, he makes that 60-yarder, it becomes a Blake Grupe decision. That makes him undeniable. So since he didn't make that kick, I think it goes back to being a Will Lutz decision. If Darren Rizzi, who knows him better than anyone, has seen him, Will told us last night that he thinks it might have been his best offseason ever. If they really feel that way, then I go with the sure thing. And it also has everything to do with the Saints and all these decisions they're making this year.
Hold up, though. I mean, I think it's a little disingenuous to call Will a sure thing. And
No.
we love
If they
Will.
feel like
Will
he is
missed
one.
the season.
Yeah,
he
yeah.
had a bad season.
Yeah.
He's far from being a sure thing at this point.
No,
so.
I'm saying if they feel that way
But
about it.
I don't think you can feel that way, is what I'm saying.
Right.
I think this is an actual. I don't think it's a Will Lutz decision. I think it was an actual competition, but we're taking the best player. Like that's
Right.
That's
Right.
it. Like, and if Will wouldn't have been good, he's out. Will is good. Groupie was good. I think it was a long time ago. I think it was after his workout when people came out and told us and said, "Oh my God, this was the best kicker workout we ever saw." I don't think it was ever just I think it was a head-to-head race from day one.
Well, I guess what I mean is if it's a tie based on performance and coaches agree this was the best offseason Will Lutz ever had, then I go with him. If the coaches are like, man, I'm seeing some inconsistencies with Will Lutz, he's just not what he used to be, then I go. But if the veteran is having his best offseason and the young guy is having a great offseason, I go with the veteran. That's just me. But we aren't privy to their private notes on these guys. Maybe they're seeing more shakiness than we know, behind the scenes. But if Groupie makes that kick, that is enough to be like,
Oh yeah,
the
It's
guy
over.
is just undeniable. Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah, and we'll continue the conversation on this kicker battle because to me, this is probably the hardest decision the Saints are having to make when it comes to cuts to get to the 53-man roster. We had a chance to talk to Blake Groupie after the game, carried himself very well, had good things to say about Will Lutz and the things that he's learned from him, but we specifically asked him about the opportunity Dennis Allen gave him by allowing him to attempt that 60-yard field goal.
I treat it like every single other kick. I've hit those in practice. I hit those pregame. I could have gave myself a better line, but I hit a good ball, shut off my leg, showed what I can do. That's what kind of the goal was out of this game, and this whole preseason, just go out there and show what I can do.
If there's anything I've learned from Blake Groupie in the last 2 months, not only does he have the leg to be a starting kicker in the NFL, he has the confidence, and I think last night was a good time to learn from him too after this kicker battle. I mean, it's really burned hot all of training camp. We heard from Will Lutz. He was very emotional about how the last 2 months have been. And it seemed like Blake Groupie was kind of carrying some of that weight as well, that, man, these guys have been going neck and neck. And really the margin for error between these two is probably about this big. And that I don't think the 60-yard field goal falls in the margin of error, and now the Saints have a really tough decision to make.
Yeah, I think they both are like feeling the weight of everything kind of evaporate a little bit, and now the chips kind of fall where they may. But I thought the juxtaposition between the dispositions of the two people was kind of like really interesting. Like Will knows what he needs to know, and he knows like what's at stake, and that weight of it was there. He's very emotional.
Yeah.
He loves where he's been, and he knows what he's had and what he could lose, and then. Like Blake was kind of, just he doesn't know what he doesn't know yet. And he was just like a little bit more like, okay, whatever happens with it. But one guy, like, definitely felt everything about it. And, Groupie's just confident and doesn't know that he could be shaken. And someday down the road, there's going to be a young dude trying to take his thing and he's going to feel that too. But I thought it was just kind of interesting to see these guys like at the two spots in their cares and just kind of how they were like reacting to the moment.
No matter what, Groupie's status has elevated probably more than any player on almost on the roster this year. Like you said, you think he's one of the 32. And the other thing is Will Lutz is emotionally attached to staying in New Orleans.
Course.
He'd like to stay in New Orleans. If Blake Groupie gets that call from Sean Payton in Denver, he'll be like, cool. Or if he gets, anywhere else where they need a kicker, he's like, I'm in the NFL. And that wasn't a sure thing for Groupie. He wasn't drafted. He wasn't ranked as like a top 5 kicker coming out this year. So for him to do what he's done, he has really advanced his career potential this summer, no matter what.
I think looking at some of the fan comments on social media and things like that, I understand the perspective of, do you get one good year out of Lutz and maybe pass up on 7 good years with Blake Groupie? That's the question nobody's going to be able to answer. We might get into the season and one or the other might have a terrible year. It might not have anything to do with age or wear and tear on the body, but I can see that perspective at least where they think, maybe Groupie's the future, but I don't necessarily think it's fair either to say that Will Lutz isn't still a part of the future.
Yeah.
As we were talking the other day,
It's an interesting
Thomas
position,
Morstead could even come back. And how long has he been in the NFL? If he wanted to come back and be the punter, as we know, the punter battle here has been a little bit shaky. I don't think the Saints are maybe giving up yet on what could be out there as far as punter. We'll see what happens after Tuesday. I think we'll learn more after Tuesday, not just when roster cuts happen, but longevity in the NFL is such a tricky thing, especially with specialists.
Well, the kicker, first of all, longevity, kickers and punters can both go till they're 40. So, I mean, but the punter conversation in New Orleans is different than the kicker conversation. The kicker is which of the two guys who've had good off seasons do we want to keep? The punter one is these two guys have both showed some warts and some inconsistency. Is either one. And look, I think it's Blake. I don't think Lou Hedley can win this with his job. It's Blake Gillikin, or do they consider someone else at this point? So there's slightly two different conversations. But yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the veteran who's starting to show wear versus the young guy who looks like he could be the next 10 years. Look how quickly that has changed. With Morstead has probably been better over the last year than Gillikin, when it seemed like it was undeniable that Blake Gillikin had to take over that job. And it seemed like the right choice at the time, because Gillikin's first year as the starting punter, he looked like he should have been an all-pro. But now he's battling inconsistency, and Morstead is back to being a consistent veteran. He's with the Jets now. So it's interesting. I make those decisions based on who I think is going to be the better kicker this year. And maybe that answer is groupie, but I don't try to get cute and be like, yeah, but you could save money and maybe get 7 years out of this guy. Right. At that position, I'm going to think now, because kicker is sort of a now position. Guys who are reliable 1 year aren't necessarily reliable long-term.
I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, I think you got to look at it all. Like, if we were arguing about this after the last show, like if he's 20th and you think Lutz is 18th, I'm going with the 20th because I'm getting 10 years out of 20. And it took them so long to find Will Lutz. So, I mean, I don't know if it is a year-to-year position. We watched the same thing. You bring up a good point with the punter being a year early, but if it works out and like, I would always rather be a year or two early, let somebody else get the last meat off the bone, and then have, the whole steak that you're eating for the next decade. So it's a hard decision. I think there's merit in both of them, and I don't think always sticking with the old guy's the right move. Like, sometimes
not the old guy,
going
but
to the
what
young
I'm
guy,
saying is
it can be the right move.
Not the old guy, the best guy right now. I don't let things like age and salary move someone up.
Right.
I don't let them move someone up.
If it's close, though, I think it's
if it's
you're being blind to like close your eye to a coin flip.
Yeah,
like
if
the things
it's a
about
coin flip.
Like the merits of, like, we know what he is and we've seen the warts. Like, on the flip side, there is, well, we have all these years in this time, and I think there's merit to both arguments. And I don't think there's really a wrong answer if they're close. And if you say younger and cheaper, those are things you have to consider, because you are building a team. You do have a salary cap. It's a little bit fake, but if you can save money on your specialists for the next 5 years, I mean, I think there's a lot of merit to that.
Somebody who is beating Father Time is our player of the game, presented by Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey, Jimmy Graham. He did not hit the dunk over the crossbar, which was such a weak move. Like, don't pump fake it that you're going to do it and then leave the fans hanging. I have never heard this fan base go as nuts as they've had in the preseason for a guy like Jimmy Graham. This has been a lot of fun to watch. He had 3 receptions in the game for 34 yards. He had the 3-yard touchdown. I can't remember the last time we were watching a veteran in the preseason make the crowd go this crazy.
Look, he's got to take the fine once for Duncan, but you got to save that for the first home game or your first touchdown in the dome when you got 70,000 people going.
Maybe that's what it was.
Not like 32,000 that are just kind of there for the vibes or whatever. So yeah, he's got to save that, pay it once, and he's got to do it. Look, I like where Jimmy's at. I was a doubter at one point when he was out there at first. I'm like, man, I don't know. Like, is this really going to work out? Is he moving well? Is he going to make the team? Is he better than some of these other guys? But it's come along, and he's showing it. He's making good catches. He's making more plays. He's running a little bit better. His feet look like they're getting a little bit lighter. He's gotten out of the cement a little bit. So I like it. I liked what he did. I think he's going to be like a key part of this team in specific situations, red zone, third down, short yardage. Like, I think he has a very specific role, and I think he's going to fill it well.
Yeah, I agree with everything. He's getting out of the cement. I mean, there's certain things that he just can't do and hasn't done really effectively in several years. I mean, it's not like the Saints are the first ones who are like, let's bring Jimmy Graham back. The Packers tried it. The Bears tried it. I mean, he hasn't been super effective, but he's talked about how healthy he finally is. The year off actually probably did his knee good. But yes, those types of catches, that was such a reminder of, he is still like the defensive players looked helpless. And,
I know.
And the one-handed catch has set up the touchdown and the touchdown itself. And it's like for how many times did we hear Dennis Allen at the end of last season, the beginning of this offseason, talking about needing that contested catch guy? He looks like the one of the best ever to be a contested catch guy. I completely agree. I even was not I couldn't say for 100% he was definitely going to make this team. I thought he was. But that was such a cementing that, oh, yeah, this is what they brought him here to do, and he showed that he can still do that.
Yeah, his frame and size certainly helped with those contested catches, pushing guys off. I thought he was going to hurt Dennis Allen. After that, it was one of the big plays. I don't believe it was the touchdown, is when he came off.
It was right after that one-handed catch.
It was right after the one-handed catch, and I just so happened to kind of look down. They didn't have it on the replay. I wish you guys could have seen this. And Dennis Allen was there to give him a high five, and there was a high five, and then Jimmy lowered his shoulder with pads on, and Jimmy's huge, and almost broke Dennis Allen. He leaned into him and hit him. Dennis was fine, but it was just funny to see that, and to see that Jimmy Graham is fired up to be back here. It's working out. Dennis Allen is happy it's working out. Another veteran who is proving that they can come in and steal a spot is Jalen Smith. He is our money segment presented by Jefferson Financial Federal Credit Union. I love the Jalen Smith story. We've been talking about this linebacker room ever since Caden Ellis left. Who is going to fill it? Zach Bond and DeMarco Jackson just have not done enough to solidify that role. We've been saying who is going to be the veteran linebacker that's going to fit and work in this system. And man, they found the missing piece to the puzzle. It seems like Jalen Smith has the range. We keep saying Demario Davis 2.0 when he's out there. He doesn't miss a beat. I think it's a great fit for the Saints, and I think he is most certainly making this 53.
Yeah, he's not stealing the spot. He's out of the bank in the getaway car, switched cars, left the cops in the dust, off spending the money in another country. That's his. He's gone. He took that. And just everybody's in the dust. Dude looks amazing. His energy on the field is crazy.
Even off the field,
all of it.
He's great at post game too.
His swag post game is immaculate. Him and DeMario, man, the shades, the suits, they're both just bringing it. Yeah. So I like what he's brought to the team. He is kind of the missing piece, and he brings an energy to the defense, and you need some energy players, and I think he's definitely another one of them. I think that's his, and everybody's chasing him at this point.
It's crazy how well it's worked out, because we had several of these shows where we're like, that's the one position we don't think they really filled. Even more so than when they signed Foster Moreau. Mm-hmm. That was the other position that we felt that way. He's been a good fit. Then they added Jimmy Graham too, But yeah, Jalen Smith looks like someone they could have signed in the first week of March,
right?
and it would have made sense. I don't understand why he was.
It feels like one of the better moves.
Yeah.
It feels like one of the better moves of the offseason.
Really?
It's crazy.
Yeah. Before we take a quick break, let's get to our surprise cut. I kind of gave mine already with Andres Pete, but who would be, if you had to pick? Maybe you think they're either going to make the 53-man roster, or they're a sure thing.
Yeah, I don't think I had any huge. My biggest. My boldest decision, and we're gonna talk about this position later, I know, is that I kind of just didn't choose the third running back that they're going to need in week one. I only kept two, and I feel like the Saints can get away with that and make that decision almost on the Saturday before the game. So I guess I was the one who cut Ellis Merriweather, who obviously has had a good camp. And then I think the surprise cut will happen at safety, because I think there's 7 guys, and if you include Smoke Monday, there's 8 guys that a lot of people might expect to make this team, and I think only 6 are going to make it. I think you guys cut Lonnie Johnson Jr., I cut Jonathan Abram. I think a surprise cut, quote unquote, is going to happen at safety, because there's just not enough room for all the names we recognize.
We both took Pete, so that's one. Outside of him, the one guy people listening to this that suddenly I thought he was on borderline a lock, and he now could possibly get cut. Ugo could be someone that doesn't make the team, and that could end up being a surprise cut. I don't know how surprising that would be to people that aren't as educated as our listeners and readers. Yeah. But I think he's somebody that could get cut, where I'd be like, oh wow, all right, because he was just playing so deep into yesterday's game, and it was just kind of man, he's still out there, and maybe that's just due to numbers, but it kind of felt like I don't know.
Yeah, the preseason conversation will continue.
You don't get out of this. You got to pick.
Whoa,
I
did pick Andres Pete.
No, you said other than Pete. You got to pick someone other than Pete. We need one more. You're trying to go easy. You got us on the hook, with the hard questions, digging up Ugo. You got to pick one.
Surprise cut. Traquan.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's fair.
Traquan Smith, just because honestly, we have no idea what's going on with him as far as the injury. I asked last night, tried to get more details. He's still in the rehab process. It was the first time we've seen him, so we don't have to put the missing person alert out there because we've been genuinely like, where is Traquan Smith?
Where's Traquan?
Yeah, I mean, no, he's good. It
Well,
was good to see
this
him there
is
on
what
the
we all
sideline.
did predict, though, and this will, like, if people just see the list of 53 and they wonder why Traquan is on it and like Keith Kirkwood or maybe even Shaq Davis is not, I would not be surprised if they put Traquan on the 53-man roster. I think this is what we all think is going to happen. And then a day later, put him on IR, so he's eligible to return. You have to do that. For the guys that might come back from IR after 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever, you have to put him on the initial 53. So all of us have like sort of a, if you see our write-up, it's an asterisk Traquan Smith like / Keith Kirkwood. I think we all think Keith Kirkwood will not clean out his locker, might not make it, but you know, he doesn't have to pass through waivers. So they'll be like, as soon as we put Traquan on IR, then you get to come back. They might do that with a couple guys, depending on Landon Young's status as well.
The Traquan Smith conversation will continue, as well as the preseason and a way too early prediction on week 1, Titans at Saints, right after this.
Now, at New Orleans Hamburger and Seafood Company, get our $10.99 shrimp remoulade combos with zesty shrimp remoulade and fried shrimp or catfish for only $10.99. And did you hear? Soft-shelled crabs are back at New Orleans Hamburger and Seafood Company.
Are you tired of renting and ready to own your dream home? Contact Jefferson Financial Federal Credit Union, your trusted source for home loans. Our competitive rates and flexible terms can help make your home ownership dreams a reality. If you're a first-time home buyer or looking to refinance, our experienced lenders are here to help. Our online application process allows you to apply on your schedule. It's quick, easy, and convenient. Visit us online at jeffersonfinancial.org to learn more. Federally insured by NCUA, Equal Housing Lender.
At Turo, we were born for moments like this. From bringing new bundles of joy into the world, to delivering what new mothers need to stay healthy. Born to keep hearts beating strong, and to keep seniors active and healthy for years to come. Because at Turo, we deliver more than babies. From heart care to cancer care, and newborns to seniors. At Turo, we're born to care.
Martin Wine and Spirits is home to a selection of hand-picked barrel select bourbon, whiskeys, and much, much more. They are family owned and operated since 1946 and specialize in wine, spirits, gourmet food, gift baskets, catering, and tasting events. They have many locations, so they're never too far away. You can check them out in Metairie, New Orleans, Mandeville, and Baton Rouge, or if it's more convenient, you can always shop online. Whether you're a wine novice or a seasoned collector, you'll enjoy the Martin Wine and Spirit experience.
I'll take a New Orleans Saints scratch up. Play New Orleans Saints from the lottery. Just scratch, fold, and punch your way to winnings. Punch your ticket with New Orleans Saints. Win up to $100,000. Enter our second chance drawings, giving you a season to smile.
Welcome back to the Turo Hospital studio as we continue our preseason breakdown. All right, let's get into the quarterback conversation. Everybody seems to be super comfortable and confident in Derek Carr after just one drive and one preseason game. In the training camp practices in Costa Mesa, he looked really comfortable in the joint practices with the Chargers. A little bit different than the situation we were in last year with Jameis Winston. There's still some questions around him being the starting quarterback, but now with Derek Carr kind of coming in and bringing that confidence back to the offense, are we confident that he can start fast in this offense?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I was a little bullish on Jameis Winston last year. I was kind of sold on the idea that year 2, I mean, they really committed to him, and he had looked good in the brief period. But the other question we had with Jameis Winston was he was coming off a torn ACL, and he got hurt during training camp. He was dealing with a minor injury that ended up being a significant injury early in the year. I mean, I think we have no qualms about Derek Carr right now. I mean, obviously he has a lot to prove for his whole career narrative. There's a hump he hasn't quite gotten over. Is he going to be better in the red zone than he's been before? But you say just one preseason drive, but it was to us who've been watching like OTA's minicamp, it was like, this is what it's looked like. Like everybody else got a chance to see, yeah, doesn't it look like it fits? Doesn't it look like he runs the Saints offense the way we're used to it being run? Doesn't it look like he's a good fit for these running backs, these tight ends, the timing, the kind of offense Pete Carmichael likes to run? It just all seems to make perfect sense. I mean, I can't guarantee Derek Carr is going to like blow everyone's mind, but it just seems like him and the Saints were kind of made for each other.
Last year, like my mentality around the team in totality was kind of looking for reasons to believe. Like I was looking for reasons to believe in Jameis Winston, looking at his Instagram post. Oh man, look at this arm. Like these are great throws. Like, and you're trying to hype yourself up about it, trying to find reasons to believe in Dennis Allen in the post Sean Payton world, trying to find reasons to just buy into everything. Mike Thomas, the young players that had key spots on offense. And, you were looking for things to just kind of support that point of view. And I think this year, like after going through last year, my mindset towards everything is looking for reasons for disbelief. Like the coaching isn't going to work. The quarterback isn't going to work. Mike Thomas isn't going to do this. This isn't going to happen. And it's just like that those layers of doubt have just kind of like melted away bit by bit by bit. And I think in this setting where everything is a little bit controlled, there's not a lot of messiness. Like everything does look exactly how you would want it to look going into the season. And I think the team's mentality reflects that too. They all feel very, very confident. And, like even Demario Davis just feels like a completely different human. Like last year at this time, he kind of like seemed a little bit like down a little bit and reserved. And looking back in the autopsy of the season, like the way he was carrying himself early on was something that I looked at a lot, mentally as I reflected on it. Like, were there signs? Like was Demario, but like he's different and he's back to exactly who he was before. And like, that's something that I've kind of really noticed maybe more than anything, just like off the field. So yeah, I feel good about everything going into the season, but it's the messiness. And when things start to fray a little bit, like how's the coaching going to respond? How's Derek Carr going to respond? We can't answer those things right now, but I like how they've built this and where it sits and going into the season. I couldn't feel any better, I think, about where they're at, considering, a realistic ceiling on what they can actually be. But I think they've answered positively, like on a lot of things that I was looking for this offseason, quarterback chief among them.
Yeah, if you as a fan want to get hyped for this season and want to predict that they're going to go 15-2, watch that Demario Davis interview from last week. He was acting like he knows some secret that we don't know. And somebody said, does it feel to him like Dennis Allen has a little more swagger? And he said, yeah, he does, because this whole team has swagger. And he goes, I can't say why, but if you're a Saints fan, you should be really excited. And it's just like, that mentality is definitely the same. Now, I will say this, though, and this is probably more true of the fan base than the team. I don't think this team will crumble if there's a little early adversity, but for this vibe to continue, for our confidence in this team to get, they better start pretty fast. Like 1-3, and all of a sudden everybody's doubting DA, everybody's doubting Derek Carr. Like, I mean, it's a fragile, confidence that we have in this team, because it better work. It should work, and it better work. Yeah.
You guys both mentioned Demario Davis being different and talking about this roster in a way positively. Dennis Allen continues to say like roster cuts are going to be really tough because they have so much talent. It kind of leads into our next topic of, are the Saints comfortable at every position right now, or are some things maybe left to be unseen? I'm thinking punter when I say that, but outside of that, I think they have their starters set.
Yeah, like we said, when we asked this question at different points of the offseason, I think tight end and linebacker were the two ones. We've talked about defensive end where maybe they need a better like number 2 level defensive end, but we like their defensive end depth. Now I like their linebacker depth. Now I like their tight end depth. I think I agree with you that if they're going to be looking at other teams' roster cuts, maybe backup right tackle is another one.
Yeah.
I wonder how they feel about Landon Young. I think they wanted to feel better about Landon Young, and then he missed most of the offseason. And I don't know if Storm Norton is definitely the answer. I think he's the guy for now that's the backup right tackle. Is Max Garcia their backup center? So maybe there's a veteran offensive lineman that they would claim from somebody else. But for the most part, I don't have huge glaring questions.
Yeah, I mean, it's the two things that stand out to me. It's still top end defensive end. Like I think they need another one, and I think left guard is potentially a problem. Like if James Hurst is a starter on an NFL line, like that's not the greatest position in the world. Like he's a very good journeyman type player, but you would ideally want somebody that teams are clamoring for as a starter on your team. And I just don't know if he's at that level. He's definitely not at that level. So I mean, those are the two things for me. I still think those are kind of like the pressure points. I don't think left guard is a huge issue. DM might not be a huge issue if they manufacture pass rush and the rotation's solid, but I think just those are the two kind of like freight points for me on the starting roster.
I don't think that's realistic to find at this point, though.
Oh, no, you can't. No, but I mean, but as far as weaknesses, I mean, those are the ones that exist.
For sure.
One of the toughest questions that we've kind of been talking about is who are the defensive backs making it? The backups to the ones that are already kind of solidified. We've been going back and forth on, is it Lonnie Johnson? Is it Jonathan Abram? We didn't really see anything new, different, bad in the preseason game that makes us believe that you should take one or the other. Why is it that those two are kind of just like splitting hairs?
I think it's just they're two different types of players, and it's trying to figure out what the team actually needs in terms of their depth. It feels like I think Lonnie Johnson's maybe at a better camp than Abram, but you look at the type of players they have overall, and you got Jordan Howden in that type of role. You have, Marcus May's kind of cut from that cloth. Even Tyrann Mathieu's kind of more of a rangy player than like he does a little bit of everything. And Abram's kind of the only one that if you're going to need a box safety, he is your box safety that can go down there, make a play in the box. Tyrann can do that as well. But as far as depth, I don't know that there's another one. And you made a grimace as I said that I thought Lonnie was a little bit better than Abram. Why do you, it seems like you have a opposite take on it. So
not
just
a strong opinion. I was actually going through my notes and I keep track of like everybody who's made plays throughout practice. I go and chart all my stuff, and I just did like a name search in all of my notes from training camp. And to me, Jonathan Abram had the better camp, but it's literally by like one or two plays. So it's really just how you decipher it. So not a super strong opinion, but I kept Jonathan Abram on my 53 and took Lonnie Johnson off. This is one of those where it wouldn't be surprised either way if one or the other makes it.
Yeah.
Or some people are saying both might make the team too. So
I was kind of like at like the jump rope line, like on the two of them, like trying to figure out which way to go. And I ultimately went with Abram because I just feel like he brings something a little bit different. Lonnie had a couple picks, but like you said, there were a couple like red zone runs where Abram had stuffs, and those plays matter too. And they don't necessarily pop the same way in a media evaluation setting when stuff's happening in those like congested areas. So Abram could have had impact in ways that like we just literally could not physically see from our vantage point, because that's just the nature of his position, where Lonnie plays more in space and that's where he's doing his stuff. So it's a little bit tough to kind of guess on him. I don't feel like they can really go wrong either way.
Right.
Like I think both those guys came in together. Neither one really kind of like separated in a major way. I don't think either one's a huge difference maker regardless. But if you're looking for depth, I think one guy brings something, and then you get even JT Gray. Like if you need someone to, emergency strikes, he's solid at safety too. And he's kind of a space player like Lonnie Johnson too. So it just kind of came down to like, okay, who helps with this? If I'm cutting an extra linebacker and I want a safety in the box, it's Abram.
Did you go with the jump rope line analogy because you were scared to say waffling because Brooke doesn't like the term waffling?
I've never heard it. You guys throw the comments in. I have never like teetering the line.
Teetering, okay.
Waffling.
Waffling, yeah.
Where does that even come from?
Just common saying.
It is a common saying, but where it comes from, I don't know. Anyway,
Pennsylvania Dutch. I don't know the actual origin.
I'm from Pennsylvania too, so that doesn't help your cause.
I hated cutting Jonathan Abram from my 53-man roster because it was in no way an indictment on Abram. It was like I really wanted to keep like 13 defensive backs. I wanted to keep Anthony Johnson, which you did. We both wanted to keep Ugo, or all three of us did keep Ugo Amadi, but he could be vulnerable. You guys didn't keep Lonnie Johnson Jr. You would have, though. It wasn't that he played himself off the roster. And Isaac got him. You didn't end up keeping him. You saw some unevenness. But I think the ultimate deciding factor that we really aren't going to be able to judge is Darren Rizzi and Phil Galliano.
Yeah.
A couple of these guys are going to be. They need to identify who their core special teams players
really
are, and
do.
we need to learn who they are, because I had made this point a couple of times. I think 5 of their top 7 special team snaps from last year are gone from this year's roster. Andrew Dowell, who was placed on injured reserve, but they didn't keep Dwayne Washington. They didn't keep Daniel Sorensen. They didn't keep Chase Hansen. And one more that I'm drawing a total blank on right now, but they didn't keep they don't have 5 of their top 7 guys from special team snaps last year. That's why I kept Isaac Yadam. I think when he arrived late last year, he became a core special teams player. It's why I kept DeMarco Jackson. I think maybe they'll like him in that role. I think I was the only one who kept him. But I don't know those things for sure. But I do know that Darren Rizzi is going to make a couple of these choices at linebacker and defensive back to settle these tiebreakers.
I want to know why you only kept 2 running backs. Was it a matter of maybe Ellis Merriweather didn't show enough, or that you wanted to fill that role somewhere else?
I needed the number somewhere.
Yeah.
I needed the number somewhere, and that's a position where I genuinely think the Saints, I mean, it's the state of the running back position right now. I don't think the Saints have to decide between Ellis Merriweather and Darrell Williams right now, and even Kirk Merritt, if it's possible they like him in the Alvin Kamara role. I don't think another team is touching any of them. And frankly, I think they could also pick from a couple other veterans if they want to sign this year's version of, Latavius Murray was on the street last year, like throughout the year. David Johnson was on the street last year. It's just a position where you have so many guys to choose from. I think Ellis Merriweather can get onto the practice squad. He would be my top choice. He's probably who I would pencil in there. I was leaning toward Darrell Williams till he got hurt. The only thing about Merriweather is feels a little redundant. I feel like he's the same style of runner as both Jamal Williams and Kendre Miller, but I think a third running back will be on the roster in week 1, but it feels more like that could be a Saturday elevation guy to me. But
you didn't mention Taysom in there too. I think if you're going 2, I think he's someone that's a factor in that too, because he's a ball carrier. I kept Merriweather, but yeah, I think Taysom's someone that's part of that equation too. So if you just wanted to go straight 2 and try to squeak by the first 3 weeks, there is a scenario where I think that could actually work.
Yeah, and this is one of those guessing game part of our 53-man roster projection. We've liked what we've seen from Ellis Merriweather. He seems like a guy who can fit in, find a role. He's learning quickly and often from Alvin Kamara. We see him bending his ear almost every practice.
Yeah.
But he could very well be a practice squad guy as well. All right, it's time for our Martin Wine and Spirits question of the day. Martin Wine and Spirits is home to a wide selection of hand-picked barrel select bourbon, whiskeys, and more. All right, 3rd and 17 asks, does Traquan Smith's status as a veteran keep him on the roster when Shaq Davis has been looking good? It's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that I think, you got to look at it like what the roles are going to be. And I don't know that Traquan and Shaq are kind of, pushing each other there. Shaq's like an upside player. If you keep him on the team, I don't really expect him to play a whole lot the whole year. And I don't know that he has a defined role. Whereas Traquan, even if he's not getting targeted, he does have a defined role, and he would get targeted. He's a contested catch guy, sort of like Shaq, but he's done it to his
proven,
level.
Yeah.
And he blocks in the run game, which is important. You got to have downfield blocks. You want to play in space. You want to attack the edges. You want to have all these running backs and be that type of team. You need receivers who can do that. I don't know where Shaq exists in that. So I'm just going to straight up say I'm ignorant to that part of his game. I haven't seen it. I don't know. So maybe that is part of it, and maybe it is more of a head-to-head competition. But I think it's just more about does Shaq get on the field this year? And if the answer is yeah, you keep him. And if it's no, you risk him to waivers and you find next year's Shaq, because the odds of this player actually being what the fans think he's going to be is probably not realistic. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. But usually these guys don't end up being Willie Snead. The Willie Sneads are very few and far between. I don't know that Shaq's that type of player. Maybe he is. We'll see. But I don't know if I view it that way. It's just kind of more like Shaq versus opportunity, and does it exist or does it not?
There's a few guys who've stuck around that are in that mold. Adrian Arrington and Brandon Coleman and, in a sense, Marquez Callaway is contested catch guy. But my problem is that's A.T. Perry for me. I can't put A.T. Perry and Shaq Davis. They have the same pluses and the same question marks. Are any of them blockers? Can any of them play multiple positions? And that's what I want out of my 4th receiver. My 5th receiver can be A.T. Perry or Shaq Davis, not both. And as we've said, Jimmy Graham's kind of like that too. He is just there to catch contested catches. So I feel like if it's not Traquan, I feel like it's Keith Kirkwood.
Yeah.
Toss up. We'll see. Time will tell.
Time will tell.
48 hours, less than 48 hours. We'll see what happens. All right, let's give a way too early prediction for week 1, Titans at Saints. Whew. Alvin Kamara's not playing. Maybe not Marcus May either, too, depending on how if he is suspended, how long it's going to be, when that comes down, all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Saints should be able to beat them. They should. If their run defense solid, they should be able to beat them. So way too early prediction. I don't have a lot of analysis on this because it is way too early, and I'm just trying to figure out who makes the team at this point. But yeah, I think the Saints should be able to beat them. I think it's a matchup they should be able to win, and they need to win. They need to set their season off right. You can't get off on the wrong foot. And I don't want to see last year's Falcons game where they're getting just dominated and then they find their way back. Go out, have a good performance, build confidence. have things to feel good about. Because even that Falcons game, like when you watched it back, it was just like, oh man, like this was a really bad game except for the end. So
the
like,
win covered like what the actual majority of the game.
Yeah.
Like it being
Everybody's
an
like,
ugly,
DA,
an ugly
Jameis,
win.
da 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 da, and it was just like, well,
I
wait a
wrote
minute.
about how Jarvis Landry was such a good fit for the team that week. And
My
Oh,
go-to
man.
line on the radio the whole week was like, whatever Jarvis Landry costs, it doesn't matter if he doesn't do anything in any other game. He earned it this week, and like he literally just earned it in that week. And that,
I thought he would do more than just that.
Yeah, so did I.
He got injured, but yeah.
Look, this game scares the crap out of me. I mean, all week one games are kind of a crapshoot. I'm assuming the Saints are probably gonna be like 3-point favorites or 2.5-point favorites as the home team. I'm not betting any points in a game. The Titans to me are sort of the AFC's version of the Saints. Like they're built a little similar. They're still going for it. They're the team that just signed DeAndre Hopkins. Like they're trying to hang on to a team that 2 years ago was the number one seed in the AFC, and they're starting to slip and hold it together. They're feeling the pressure of needing to win this year. They're not rebuilding right now and everything like that. So I think these are two teams that are sort of in a similar state right now that are both like, this is the one we have to win to set our season off to the right. I'm going to pick the Saints to win. But I don't think this is a pushover team. I don't feel like they've this is how I would feel if it was like a young rebuilding team that's not ready coming in week one. So I think it's a tough way to start the season, to be honest. And like you said, their run defense better be ready. Derrick Henry and Ty Spears, who's been the star of the preseason. This is a team that's probably going to run 40 times against them right away. So they're going to test that run defense right away.
Yeah, it'll be a good test for the Saints. A lot of local ties, like you mentioned.
No
Tulane
transition
running
out
back.
of here. You got to pick one too. You got to make your pick
I think
too.
I'm leaning towards the Saints, but again, it's a good benchmark, a good test. I mean, to me, it's, can this run defense get back to what it was? That's going to be the one thing that I need to see outside of
That's
the
a tough
obvious
matchup for week one, because we always hate, like, every week one, ever since the NFL got away from playing in the preseason, tackling is so sloppy in week one. Even if the Saints have a good run defense this year, it's not going to look as good in week one as it's going to look in week 5 or whatever. It's kind of brutal to give a team Derrick Henry in week one when they barely practice tackling.
Well, we'll see. We'll see like what it looks like. I kind of want to see too some of the new faces in a real live ones-on-ones. Colin Saunders, Nathan Shepard, Brian Brzee. Those guys, I want to see what they really look like in a game. And they've been talking about how explosive they are this year. Guys dropped weight, are a little bit smaller, I guess. I can't think of a better word, but quicker off the line. Will that translate? How will that help? If that does help the run defense, pass defense. I mean, we'll see what happens. But a lot of local ties with the Titans. I know a lot of people are going to be coming in town that are from Louisiana that are watching some of these guys. Of course, Tajay Spears, Ponchatoula Great, Tulane running back. I know the sidelines are going to be packed with a lot of his people. We can't wait to see it. We will see you guys after Cut Down. We'll be breaking down the Saints' newest 53-man roster when that comes out. We'll see you next time.